Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She is the author on Love and Death and Belonging, no other than Miss Daphne Wright.
Hello.
Welcome to Book 101, Miss Daphne. Can you please introduce yourself?
I can. First of all, I'm Daphne Leonie Wright, and I'm the debut indie author of On Love and Death and Belonging. And I want to say thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity, Daniel. I've listened to a lot of your podcasts and I've learned so much from the other authors and the different genres. And the reach that your program has is really quite amazing. So thank you for having me on your show.
Yes, you are most welcome because this podcast is created for you, Miss Daphne.
Yeah, wonderful.
So, what age did you realize that you are good in writing?
Well, um, even telling stories, I guess, even as a young child, under 10, I would gather the neighborhood kids and tell them horror stories. Now, the book I've written is not a horror story, but they used to gather around. I used to enjoy scaring them. And then just in school, I was told I was a pretty good writer by different teachers. Uh, Unfortunately, I never did much with it at the time or throughout my uh, life until now. Uh, I think good old COVID gave me the impetus to actually sit down, start writing, and actually finish what I started. So, yeah.
So, that's the good side of the COVID. Do you think because the COVID persuaded you to write a novel?
It did. And, let's face it. I know in the world there's so much stuff going on, I guess we'll call it. And I know, COVID didn't help things, but I do think there was opportunity for a lot of us to actually move a little slower, get some of the things that we wanted to do or always do off our bucket list. And, one of my friends wrote a book about her experience with triple negative breast cancer. And she looked at me one day and she said, if not now, when? If not now, when? And I thought to myself, because I've been writing a book for off and on for decades, yeah, you're right. If not now, when? So I actually found an old story that I liked from about 2014 and sat down and finished it.
Who are your favorite authors that influence you the most?
Well, it's amazing. I don't know. I guess everybody influences in some way, no matter if they're an author or, hey, Daniel, you've influenced me. I've sat here listening to those podcasts. The authors you've had on have influenced me. But if I was going to look at who I read the most, I am Canadian. And I don't know if that's just the reason, but I read a lot of Canadian literature. And one of my favorite authors is Margaret Atwood. I actually, surprisingly enough, I did a master's in liberal studies. So we did have a book club and I read all 6 volumes in English, mind you, from Proust. And I don't know, I sometimes, back in the day, Lawrence Saunders, he wrote all kinds of crime and mystery things. Yeah, so I like all genres actually. And I think everything I read influences me in some way. Yeah.
Oh, yes. So, if you describe their writing, what is it?
Okay. I'm more character driven. When people and some people love it when they're describing the big lawns and the grass and the wind, and that's not me. I'm kind of like, just tell me about the people. So I'm more character driven. I do like good plots, and sort of something that gets you involved. uh, you find yourself in another world. I also find it interesting when maybe you don't even like the person that you're reading about. If you met them in real life, you wouldn't necessarily like them. But for some reason, you're involved in a novel and you kind of go, wow. Maybe because you get to learn about the person a little more and accept all of them, their foibles, their good parts. Uh, so I think I'm more character driven when uh, for the novels that I really like.
Yes. Who give you motivation to pursue your writing?
Who could, well, again, my girlfriend Anne, her and I originally were going, the person I spoke of earlier who had breast cancer and has survived it. And she wrote a really great book, Angel in the Marble, What Breast Cancer Taught Me. Her and I, we had a soap business together, of all things. And during that time, we'd sort of throw ideas about writing back and forth. And we'd even started a little bit of a writing club. But again, that sort of fell by the wayside. And my husband has been a really great support for me, as well as I did go back and get a master's in liberal studies. And a lot of the people in the class were either writers or involved in writing some way. And, especially when you have to write a thesis, that is a great motivator. So I learned a lot from them as well. I got a lot of support.
Yes, very well said, Miss Daphne. So let's talk about your debut novel on love and death and belonging. How did you crafted it?
Well, to be honest, I self-published, so I'm indie published, and I went through a company called the Self Publishing Agency. And I must admit, when I submitted the my manuscript, I thought I had submitted a masterpiece. It needed nothing else, maybe a few, punctuation, some quotation marks. It was just going to fly. And the editor sent it back very kindly. They always start off a little positive and then hit me with all the stuff I had to do. And it was like, whoa. So it was a lot of work working with the editor. The editor, Tara McGuire, she gave me a lot of ideas. Like she'd ask you a question, or my book involves three people. It's from three people's point of view. And there were times the voices weren't distinct. So she helped me with that as well. So I must admit, I got a lot of help from the editor, and basically sat down. It's basically you have to sit down and write it. It doesn't write itself. So yeah, I wish it did, but it don't. So yeah.
Yes, it don't. So on love and death and belonging, what behind the title of your debut novel?
Well, is it all right if I just read from the cover?
Oh yes, definitely. Go ahead.
I think it's written somewhat succinctly and gets to the point. So, On Love and Death and Belonging is a fresh, lighthearted, yet profound look at the intersection of the lives of three later middle aged people, a group often othered in today's society and not always included in the lexicon of contemporary novels except as bit players. Fiona, a burned out nurse still needing a paycheck, counting the days to retirement. Bryce, a gay man coming to terms with the diagnosis of ALS and the need for care. Adelina, marginalized and living with domestic abuse, her belief in God guides her. The impacts of aging, loneliness, isolation, invisibility, and illness leading to medical assistance and dying unite these three characters as they search for belonging. I also want to add here, I'm also a nurse, and I'm looking at if I'm looking at the list here, it's like, oh my goodness, that sounds depressing. But I want people to know it. There are a lot of lighthearted moments, and it's not all doom and gloom.
Yes, sounds interesting, Mr. Daphne. But before we go on, I want to shout out to the people listening in Brazil.
Ooh.
Obrigado, obrigado. As they said, if you're a feminine, say obrigada. If you are male, obrigado. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast because in Sao Paulo I got 49%, in Parana at 11%, Minas Gerais at 9%, Rio de Janeiro, my favorite place, 9%, Monte Grosso 5%, Lagoas at 3%, Rio Grande do Sul 3%, Amazonas at 2%, Mato Grosso do Sul at 2%, Pernambuco at 2%, Serra 2%, Goes at 2%, Santa Catarina at 2%, and last but not the least, Federal District at 2%. Thank you so much, Brazil, for supporting this podcast because this podcast is created to empower writers all over the world, like Miss Daphne Leonie Wright.
Wow, that's a list.
Yes, so Miss Daphne, on love and death and belonging, what is the best highlight?
What is the best highlight? Um, well, I wanted to. Our society is full of more people than ever on the planet of the Earth, and yet there's a lot of loneliness in all ages. In fact, the U.S. Attorney General in May just put out a paper on loneliness and social isolation. So it's somewhat, I don't know, is the word confounding? Interesting. I don't know quite what one might want to call it, but here we are. We can text, we can tweet, we can email, we can phone, we can go on Instagram, and yet people are lonely and feeling isolated. I wanted to portray that, as well as in about 2014, boomers were starting to turn 65. So we've got the biggest group of people ever in the history of the planet turning 65. And some of them were starting to look at the fact that they would need long-term care in the future. It became more of a realization. And what I had heard were that gay people were feeling that they may have to go back into the closet to get the care they needed. So I was listening to a Canadian Broadcasting Corporation have a couple documentaries on this, as well as there was a town hall in Vancouver, where I live, that I went to listen to about this issue. So that was sort of the impetus for me writing the book. And then I just also want to talk about what's it like, with Fiona the nurse. She's single, and she always thought she'd be married with a family, and she's at a place that she never thought she'd be. She thought she'd be retired and traveling. And then I wanted to include somebody who is in a marginalized work situation, and she is religious, and unfortunately she's surviving domestic abuse from her husband. So these are sort of topics that I wanted to explore. And then Bryce, for example, the gay gentleman who's looking at long-term care, he's been diagnosed with a devastating illness, ALS, and realizing he's going to need care. How does he get it? Care is very expensive. And he's, again, having to look at the long-term care facility to get that. And just what is it like to live with a terminal illness and the day-to-day of it. I think sometimes we hear these diagnoses, but we don't realize the struggle that people are going through.
Very well said, Ms. Daphne. So we're talking about the highlights. What do you think the flaws?
I think the highlight are how the three people, seemingly different, come together and create a bond in a very short period of time. And we get to know them throughout the reading of the book. And so we get to see them individually, and then we get to see them come together. And I think that is the highlight of the book.
So how about the flaws?
The flaws?
Yes.
I don't know. I think somebody else would have to read it and let me know what they thought might be the flaws. It's kind of hard when you have put so much of yourself into something. go through that in my head here.
Yes. So let's talk about the main characters of the novel.
Okay, well, we've got Fiona, and as I mentioned, she's a burned out nurse and living day to day, maybe drinks a little bit too much wine. Sort of for some reason, she's sort of lost touch with some of her friends and even her family to some degree. So she's sort of living in the big city. I did place the book in Vancouver because I know Vancouver, British Columbia. And but the book could take place anywhere. But she is living in Vancouver and just basically getting up, going to work, and coming home. Bryce is a lovely gentleman. He's gay. His husband had died 6 years earlier, and Bryce had taken care of him. So he understands what it means for someone to have a diagnosis of a terminal illness and the care that is involved. And Bryce realizes he's got no one that can care for him. And Adelina's a lovely lady who's just working really hard, finding herself in a low-paying job, and does believe in God, and that belief guides her as she makes her way along.
Yes, indeed, Miss Daphne. So, on love and death and belonging, what are your struggles in writing with?
Struggles. Well, Daniel, as I sort of had said when boomers were turning 65, which basically was like 2014. So 2014, 2013, I had started writing this, and I don't know, you pick up the old PC and you start typing away, and then I don't know, work, you get tired after work, something's going on. And it was just basically sitting and taking the time to actually do it. I was very blessed that I found the self-publishing agency because I had no idea. I'm going to tell you, you pick up a book and you think to yourself, okay, here's a book. For me anyway, I didn't realize, oh, you need to design a cover. Oh, there's a design on the interior. Oh, you got to look at punctuation. How do you develop your characters? There's so much that goes into a book that I had no idea. Except, I read a lot. I pick up a book and read it. That I was lucky that I was guided along. I mean, sometimes I thought to myself, where are they taking me, or what am I doing? Yeah, because I was like, whoa. But yeah, for me, I was very blessed that I found this company and they helped me. I know a lot of people, some people will obviously do traditional publishing. Some people will work away at it on their own. I needed guidance. Otherwise, I'd still be sitting here typing away on my PC thinking I created a masterpiece when I hadn't. So, working on my own. But yeah, those are the struggles, finding the time and actually sitting and doing it.
So, on love and death and belonging as your debut novel, what did you learn from it?
What did I learn from it? I have learned so much, Daniel. I cannot tell you. We only have so much time, honestly. It's not just, I mean, because as a nurse, you write fragments of sentences, for example. So patient to X-ray. So formally writing with sentence structure, and where does that punctuation mark go, and where do the quotes go, and where do the brackets go, when do I indent a paragraph, all that I had to review, as I had not done that in many decades. Even for my master's, I had a little more formal writing there, but to actually sit down and write a whole book and do all that again, it had been some time. All the things that I learned, from the editor, how to formulate some of my thoughts, depicting timelines. Oh, they did this then, well, why not there? It's some of the vernacular I was using. I also have been someone who has avoided social media. So you're talking a dinosaur here, and quite happily so. But when you are an author and you want to get your book out there, you need to be on different platforms. So learning all that has been something else for me. Even though, I'm sure people click and go, yay, that's so easy, but not not for all of us. And just the whole publishing game. And now, as one author had told me, you write the book and that's 50%, but the other 50% is the marketing. And I have never, I did with my soap company a little bit, but, as a nurse, it's not like I've had to be a big marketer. So now I'm learning all about marketing, and I thank you for this platform, Danielle, because I know people in Brazil, for example, are going to hear about my book.
Yes.
So thank you. And and I get to meet so many wonderful people. That's what's also so great.
Yes, that'd be awesome. In British Columbia, I got 99% audience share. So please do support Miss Daphne Leonie Wright. All my listeners in Vancouver, please do support Miss Daphne Leonie Wright because it's from Vancouver.
Thank you.
Yes, so on Love and Death and Belonging, is there a sequel or prequel of the novel?
Not at this point. I've actually started writing something totally different. I guess I've had all these over the years, right? All these thoughts in my head, and now I'm actually starting to write. They're all coming to the forefront. It's like, oh, these characters are actually wanting a voice. So the next one's a little bit different. It's again fiction. This is fiction what I've written, but it might involve murder actually. So
Oh, sounds interesting. You are most welcome to come back and promote that book anytime.
thank you.
Yes, and so on Love and Death and Belonging, what do you think? Twist and turn that you can offer to them that, oh, this will be a great or something that people will hunt them.
Well, I think again it's a contemporary novel. It deals with a lot of issues that are going on in our uh, today's society. One of the big issues is in Canada, and I think about 10 states in the US. In the US, they call it assisted suicide. In Canada, it's medical assistance in dying. And I know other countries are looking at it, and some other countries it is available. But I think it gives an aspect, whether you agree with it or not, because I know full well people are not going to agree with it. I know full well people are, but it gives people an idea of acceptance. I think in our society today, and I'm using this as the medical assistance in dying as just one of the aspects of acceptance in my book. But I think in our society today, people shout over people and they want to prove that they're right. And I sometimes think it would be nice if people could step back a little bit and just say, okay, I may not agree with you. Let me listen and let me accept you. So I do think my book has a lot of that in there uh, to help people help them along in today's troubled society where sometimes we're not always listening and appreciating others.
Yes, very well said, Miss Daphne. I think that is our food of thought for tonight. Oh, that's be awesome. So, Miss Daphne, can you please invite our listeners to buy your book?
Well, it's on Amazon in both soft cover and Kindle. And I also have my website, Daphne, Daphne, Leonie, Leonie, Wright, WRIGHT.com. And it's available for purchase there as well.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Daphne because if you support her, of course, more books to come. We need books, 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 people to read, most especially a good novel. So, Miss Daphne, on love and death and belonging, if you give a five adjectives, what are they?
It's fun, lear- learning, um, acceptance, or accepting, I guess, would that be it? Um, Profound, thoughtful.
Yes, definitely. And thank you for your time.
Daniel, thank you so much. And thank you for your time. And also, really, what a great bunch of podcasts. I just, over the airwaves because of you. And I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yes, you are most welcome to come back, as I said, to promote your second book. I will support you from the bottom of my heart because this podcast is created for all the writers all over the world.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Bodycon people, see you soon.